Have you ever really stopped to wonder how a new medicine actually gets from a scientist's lab all the way to your local pharmacy shelf? It's this incredible journey, right? It can take over a decade, cost billions of dollars, and it all boils down to passing one final, absolutely massive test, the FDA's new drug application. So let's unpack how this whole thing works.
And that really is the core question, isn't it? The answer, well, it's not simple at all. We're talking about a process that's built on just mountains of data, years and years of clinical trials, and honestly, one of the most rigorous scientific reviews on the entire planet.
So, it helps to think of it like an epic journey. A potential new drug, it has to prove itself at every single turn. But before it can be sold to even one person, it has to get past the final gatekeeper. And that is the U.S. Food and Drug Administration, what we all know as the FDA.
All right, so here's our roadmap for this explainer. First, we'll look at the drug's final exam. Then we'll unpack the whole story it has to tell. After that, we'll see how the FDA actually grades this thing, check out the official rulebook, figure out who makes the final call, and then we'll follow that path from the application all the way to your pharmacy.
Okay, first up, let's talk about what is, without a doubt, the single most critical document in this entire journey. It's called the New Drug Application, or NDA for short. And you can really think of it as the final, super comprehensive exam that every single new medicine has to pass.
And this isn't some newfangled regulation that just popped up. Nope. This system has been the absolute bedrock of drug safety for decades. We're talking since 1938. Every single new drug that's intended for sale here in the U.S. has had to pass this exact same kind of test.
So what exactly is an NDA in official terms? Well, the FDA itself calls it the formal vehicle, basically the formal proposal to approve a new drug for sale. It's the culmination of years, sometimes, believe it or not, over a decade of research. And when I say it's massive, I really mean it. A single application can be hundreds of thousands of pages long. It's just incredible.
Okay, so if this application is that huge, what in the world is actually inside it? If it's a final exam, what are the questions? Well, it's actually less about answering specific questions and much more about telling a drug's entire life story.
In fact, the FDA itself puts it perfectly. They say the documentation is supposed to tell the drug's whole story, and that's key. This isn't just a quick summary, it's a complete biography of the medicine, right from its earliest days in a lab all the way to the results from hundreds, sometimes even thousands of patients.
So, what are the key chapters in that story? Well, the application has to include absolutely everything. We're talking all the data from the early animal studies for safety. Then, all the results from the human clinical trials that show how it actually works in people. A complete list of every single ingredient, and a really detailed plan for manufacturing to prove that every pill can be produced consistently and safely.
Okay, so once all that information is submitted, the FDA's team of reviewers, they get to work. Their job is to sift through all of it and answer a few absolutely fundamental questions to decide if this drug passes the test and is truly ready for the public.
And really, the entire FDA review boils down to these core questions. First, is the drug safe and effective for what it's supposed to do? Second, and this one is so important, do the benefits for patients actually outweigh the known risks? Third, is the proposed label, the instructions and warnings, accurate and easy to understand? And finally, can the company's manufacturing process guarantee a high-quality product every single time?
Now, you might be wondering, okay, what rules are the FDA and the drug companies actually following here, right? How does everyone know what to do? Well, the whole system is built on a really clear distinction between what you could call hard and fast laws and official recommendations.
So here's the crucial difference. On one hand, you have the law. These are things like the Federal Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act, passed by Congress. They are absolutely mandatory, non-negotiable rules. Then on the other hand, you have what are called guidance documents. Think of these as the FDA's playbook. They show the agency's current thinking and their recommended best practices. But they aren't legally enforceable. It means a company can use a different approach, as long as it still satisfies the actual law.
All right, so the drug story has been told, the rules are all established. Now what? Who actually makes the final, often multi-billion-dollar decision? Well, it's not just one person signing a piece of paper. It's a whole process that involves a wide range of experts. And a really key part of this process involves something called an advisory committee. So what are these? They're basically groups of experts from outside the FDA
who are brought in to give independent advice on really complex scientific or technical stuff. They review all the data and then give their recommendations to the agency.
And who's on these committees? Well, it's a pretty diverse team. You've got top scientific experts, physician researchers, you have statisticians who can really dig into the complex data. And this is so important. You also have representatives for the public. And that can even include patients who can speak directly about what it's like to live with a certain disease.
Now, the advice from these committees is, for sure, incredibly influential. But, and this is a really vital point to understand, their vote is just a recommendation. That's it. The final legally binding decision to approve or reject a new drug, that is made solely and only by the FDA.
So, here we are, pretty much at the finish line. The review is all done, the expert advice has been given, and the FDA has finally made its call. So, what happens next? Well, it really all comes down to one of two outcomes. If it's approved, boom, the company gets the green light. The drug can be legally marketed and sold in the US. But if it's not approved, that's not necessarily the end of the road. The FDA sends what's called a complete response letter that details all the deficiencies. It basically explains exactly what's missing. The sponsor can then go back to the drawing board, maybe conduct more studies or revise the application, and then try again.
So you can see, for over 80 years now, this rigorous process has been the bedrock of drug safety and efficacy here in the US, protecting millions and millions of people. But as science just accelerates at a crazy pace with new technologies like gene therapies and AI-driven drug discovery, it leaves us with a final, really important question to think about. How must this time-tested process continue to evolve to keep pace with the incredible future of medicine?